All right. How's it going, guys? I'd like to welcome John Wooley and my dad, Steve Ham. John Wooley was an editor for the Tulsa World and just a big name in my house growing up. I mean, to me, it's just Wooley. Wooley called, or we're going to Wooley's, but he has a lot of great stories. And my dad, Steve Ham, is going to be here. He's going to help ask him questions, and so we're going to start. How's it going, John?
It's going fine. Heath, thanks for having me on with you. I appreciate it. And I wasn't an editor; I was just a writer.
Oh,
Our editors don't get to write. Editors don't get to write as much as writers do. So I always said if I could be, once I got to, didn't think I could get any better as a writer, I'd become an editor. And I never got to the point where I couldn't become any better. So there you go.
well, you know what's cool about you to me is like even when I was a kid, I knew you're my dad's friend, but whenever I needed to get any information about the bands and local stuff
Right?
going on, I'd read and I'd be like, that's Wooly, and I'd
Yeah. Well, that was my job for 23 years, writing entertainment for the Tulsa World, and so yeah, it was great fun, and that's actually I think well I'm sure that's actually how I met your dad. So back in the day.
well, I'd like to start. What got you into wanting to be a writer and maybe in the music? What got you in both those things that kind of
Well, my grandmother was a writer, and I don't know if it ran in the family or what. And it's funny, my dad was a school administrator in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's where I was born. My mom's from this part of the country, Rogers County, Oklahoma, and that's why we moved back here because my dad died when I was 4 in 1953 during the polio summer, and he had some writing talent. I've seen some stuff that he did, and he had a piece of land picked out, and he was going to retire from school, being an administrator in school. Had some land picked out up in northern Minnesota, and he was going to have a little cabin, and he was going to write, and he died, and so he never got to do it. He died when he was in his early 50s. So I think that had a lot to do with me wanting to get started, Heath, get started pretty early. I got my first rejection slip when I was in junior high, I think. I wrote a horrible story, a science fiction story, and sent it off and got a rejection slip. And then in 1970, I sold my first story to Eerie Magazine, which was a horror magazine back then from Warren Publications, a horror comic book. But it was black and white, big magazine size, and I sold it when I was a student at OSU, and that got me started. That was my first professional sale. 25 big ones, $25. And I'll tell you what, when I went to that mailbox in Kerr Hall, my grandmother, Mary M. Woolley, used to always tell me about how you get the thin envelope. When you get the thin envelope, you know you've got something because they're not sending your manuscript back. They're sending you a check. So I open up my mailbox and there's that thin envelope for 25 bucks from an editor named Archie Goodwin, who, as it turned out, was from Tulsa. I had no idea until years later he was a Tulsa boy.
I bet
But
you're
I'll tell you a
excited
story
though.
about, pardon me?
I bet
Oh,
you're
oh,
excited about 25
I've
bucks.
never been so excited before or since selling my first piece, selling my first written work. I'll tell you a story about my grandmother real quick, if you don't mind. She was a poet in Minnesota, and she was the head of the Minnesota Poets, whatever guild or society or whatever. But her big secret was that she made all of her money writing for confession magazines. Now, people your age don't remember confession magazines. Me and your dad remember True Confessions, My Story, all that stuff that was on. Supposedly, these stories told by young women who'd made bad mistakes, or first person stories, and but that really they were written by writers. And that's how my grandmother, because poetry didn't pay anything, and that's how my grandmother made her living, was writing these confession stories. So, but she would always say she's a rock-ribbed Presbyterian, and she was always say, "Well, my confession stories they have good morals. They tell a moral lesson." We used to go up to her house in St. Paul for summer vacation, and we'd sit down on those old chairs that she had, and underneath them would be just stacks of these like these lurid confession magazines. Turns out I didn't know it at the time because all of them she'd written for all of them. So she was probably 90, she was 94. Last time I really visited with her about writing, we talk about writing a lot in the summers. She had an old 2-story house, St. Paul, looking down on downtown St. Paul, and we'd sit out on the porch and talk about writing. She was 94, and I was probably in college or maybe a little later. And so I'm talking to her. I called her Dammy, And so I'm talking to her. I said, "Well, Dammy, are you working on anything these days?" And she says, "Oh yeah." She says, I just finished a little confession story." But she said, "I'm trying to write it from the point of view of people your age." And she said, "But it's a good story." Says it's about a young girl about your age who makes some mistakes, but then at the end it has a very good moral, and it's a very moral story. I said, "Great." I said, "What do you call it?" She says, "Well, I just call it, I don't know which hippie is the father of my child." I think, and she sold the story at age 94.
Is
So
it is
she's
this like a
about right.
precursor to like romance novels? Is it kind of all in that?
Well, no, it was supposed to be true. They were allegedly true. It was like, what was it like, Steve? Like True Confessions and My Confessions and My Story, and it was all supposedly these first person women talking about how they'd screwed up some way or another, and then they at the end of it, everything's okay. And they were big on the news set for the 30s, probably into the 70s, and they died out in the late 70s.
So your grandma was a writer, and
Yeah,
she definitely had a big impact on you. It sounds like.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, it's kind of curious just listening to that. Did she also teach you like who taught you like how to write, like the fundamentals of how to spell and write and grammar? Like, what would you say your biggest influence on that
Well,
was?
I learned that in school. I was a big reader. I was a huge reader growing up, and I learned how people put together sentences, and I continue to learn things about sentence structure and how to vary your sentence structure and how to keep stuff interesting. And it took me a long time. I mean, this is a dopey thing, but it took me a long time to realize people love stories. That the best thing you can do is tell stories. Not whatever it is, do moral instruction or anything else. Tell stories. People love stories. So I learned it. I really taught myself the fundamentals of it. I learned English at Chelsea High School, Chelsea Junior High and High School. Learned English and just put it to work on doing my stories.
So where did the music part come in? Where you were any early?
That's a good. I loved music from the very beginning, and I don't know. First stuff I remember loving is big band music. My mom had some, and Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller and Gene Krupa and all these people. I just loved it, and I think some of that had to do with by the time I was in the seventh grade, I was playing in the band, and of course in the band, in school bands, they would have all of this '40s material. But then my uncle, he was Cherokee, Heath was his name, and he married into the family. My uncle was a retired oil field worker, and when he retired and moved in next door to us with my aunt, my mother's sister, he had a big bunch of 78 RPM Bob Wills records. And the first time he played me Bob Wills, it was just like an electric shock. It was like, because he had those '40s records, Steve, the ones where he had the big band. And so he had stuff like My Confession and all of that. And it was like, well, this is big band, but this is country too. And this is all this different stuff, blues and all this different stuff. And I was just really taken with that. So that's kind of where I got started. And of course, like everybody in college, I played music, I played guitar, and I was in a couple bands. And well, my band, the Beef Squad, was the first band on the old Mazeppa show, which is way, way before your time, but
Well,
not
I've
before.
watched I've watched all the reruns with Blub Son.
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh
no,
boy.
me and Blubs like so I ran into little Glenny um up in Grand Lake at Mooney's Bar and Grill I was playing, and he's like, he's like, "Little Bone, come on back to my place." So me and Matt Maxwell, Matt, he plays with like uh Luke Combs now, and
Uh-huh.
he was playing with me for years, and we went back to his place at Grand Lake, and like he pulled out beer and started frying us tacos and all kinds of stuff. And then he made us watch every episode of Mazeppa.
Well, now see, those are the Channel 8 episodes, Heath. Channel because Channel 8 did not tape over their tapes when they taped the shows. Channel 6, by the time Channel 8 came along, I was in the Navy. Channel 6, with Channel 6, they taped over their shows. So the ones I was on got erased. Now I've got audio tapes of them that I taped just off of the TV speaker, but nobody could find those. They were destroyed. Now some people say maybe they did some kinescopes where they shot, movie footage on the TV, or we'd hear rumors about 2-inch tapes maybe being found that someone had recorded, but we've never found them. So the Channel 6 stuff was the stuff I was on, and it was all gone.
So
It
this is
was
like college and stuff.
Yeah, I was in college. I was in college, and that's when where the Beef Squad came out of OSU, Oklahoma State. We were kind of a jug band without a jug.
What was it like knowing Gary Busey and Gaylord Sartain?
Never knew Gary because that Gary came along after I'd already gone to the service. Gaylord I knew pretty well. He and I were good friends for a time, and he was a movie collector of old movie posters. He loved old stuff, as you can tell from the theme song and everything that you saw. And I remember, I'll never forget one time when, Leon Russell moved back from the West Coast after just tearing things up and bringing everybody out there. And, all these Oklahoma guys, all these Tulsa guys got in to playing for different places, playing in bands and playing for studio work and everything. But then Leon comes back in about 1970, and it's finals week one week, and I think it's probably my senior year, so it'll be 1970. So finals week, I get a call from Gaylord. Hey, Leon Russell's in town. He's seen you on our show. He says he wants to come out. Let's go drink some beer. Well, I had two finals that next morning that I was studying for, and it was like the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, right? And the angel won out. I didn't go, and I always, I've never second guessed myself really on that because I had to, I was trying to pass and graduate, and but that I never went. I never went down to Stillwater, or I never went down from Stillwater to Tulsa to see Leon. It was much later that I finally talked to Leon.
Well, it's not a bad life whenever you know, there's no, you're doing something good and then you regret not doing something
Yeah, that's
simultaneously,
right.
right?
Oh,
Like,
I got to tell you my favorite Gaylord story. I told this to Leon Russell the very first time I ever interviewed him. So Gaylord, Steve, you knew him, didn't you? Gaylord was kind of a madman in a lot of ways.
No, I did not know him.
You didn't
No,
know him? Well,
no.
we live out in the country. Of course, Gaylord lived in Tulsa. And this is probably, our kids were really young. I'll tell you when it was. It was when that Jim Varney show was on Saturday mornings, and my kids were really young watching it, and they just thought it was the greatest thing. Gaylord wanted to come out and shoot his guns to my house because we're on about 10 acres out here, 13 acres. And so I said, yeah, come on out this Saturday and everything. And so, my son Jonathan meets, is about 7 or 8. He meets him at the door, and he's doing this because there was a thing that Gaylord always did on that show where he did the kind of deal. And he told Jonathan, he says, oh, you do that better than I do. And Jonathan was just so excited. But he starts pulling out his guns, and his family is pulling in, and they're just fleeing in terror, trying to get in the house. And he's pulling these guns out of his trunk, and he's got a 22 pistol. Well, before I could even corral him, he shot a hole in the mailbox. He shot a hole in the gate out here. Now I've got some cans and stuff down by the pond, so I kind of try and keep getting him down there, and he's just shooting, and he's carrying on. I said, Johnny, he says, this is great. I've never done this before. I said, you've never shot your guns before? He says, not outside the house.
Oh my God. That's a good one.
True story.
man, stories that happened a long time ago that you'd never hear about today.
I know it. He was something. He was a dandy.
So on into college, your early 20s, I think we're about in that era, right? Like when
Yeah.
did you, where are we going at this point in time in your life? You were talking
Well,
about
I
the
was hoping to
Army
go
and
home, but I went to the service instead. I made my college last as long as I could, but it wasn't long enough to stay out of Vietnam. So there was a little Naval Reserve Center in Stillwater, and I joined. And at the time, they had a program called the 2x6 program for naval reservists. You go on 2 years active duty, and then you had to drill a couple of years. And if you were enlisted, it was only 2 years. If you went in as an officer, it was 3 years. Well, I didn't want to go in for an extra year, so I went in as an enlisted man, even though I had my degree. I got my degree in December of 1970. So I went into the service, and I joined the Navy because I thought maybe that was probably the best play. The North Vietnamese didn't have much of a Navy, and sure enough, I got on the USS New Orleans, and we carried Marines to Vietnam for 10 months, and then went to Haiphong Harbor where we swept. We're part of what was called Operation Sweep, where we swept mines out of Haiphong Harbor as part of the settlement of the war. And so I was in the service for 2 years. We picked up Skylab 2 as well, so it was a pretty exciting time. I think I was telling you earlier when we talked, Heath, that I was the program director for the ship's radio station. When we took on the Marines, we had a complement of 500 of crew. We took on the Marines, took on 1,500 Marines, ground pounders, and so then we took them over. It was funny; they had nothing to do, and so it made everything awful because they would line up for breakfast chow and then morning chow, and then they'd line up for lunch. And it's like you couldn't, they just swept through the ship's door like locusts. By the time they were done, all that was left was about 3 soap dishes to buy. And so a friend of mine, I was in the X division, I was a yeoman, I took care of the officer records, and a friend of mine did a little experiment. He stood by a hatch, in front of a hatch on the we were on the USS New Orleans, a helicopter carrier. Stood in front of a hatch, stood there for about 15 minutes. And then he stepped aside and he looked back, and there was this line of Marines behind him, lined up clear back, probably 100 yards, because they had nothing to do whatsoever. It was until they were taken by the helicopters and put on the beach of Vietnam.
Wow, that's quite a story. And
Yeah.
is there anything else that happened in the Army that you want to talk about for we get after this era of your life?
Oh, well, it was the Navy, it was Navy
The
Reserve,
Navy.
and I'm very proud of the fact that I was one of the creators of the first annual Haiphong Harbor Trivia Bowl. We were out at Haiphong Harbor for 2 months. They had to try and figure out something to do with these people. And so everybody, including the Marines and all the different divisions, would send people to the TV. We had a TV studio, and they'd send people to the TV studio and would have a trivia contest, and whoever won would get, yeah, I don't know, something. There wasn't anything left to ship store, so I don't know what they got. And then after that, I helped create a show called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which was a knockoff of Hollywood Squares. So in Haiphong Harbor, created two short-lived TV shows for Haiphong Harbor on the that were broadcast on the TV for about 2000 for our 2000 that we had.
Are any of these programs you created still running?
Oh, hell no. Okay. No. They were one and done. They were one-offs. It was just basically to keep to keep people from, that people get antsy on a ship when they can't get off. And so we were trying to kind of give them something to help them. And same thing with the radio station. I had different genres of music and different guys doing different things on it. So it worked out pretty well. I think we kind of defused maybe some things that could have happened.
And that when you came back from Vietnam, I've heard a lot of stuff about that. How was that when you came back?
Well, I didn't have it as bad as a lot of people did. I mean, and plus, honestly, I was in the Navy. I wasn't in there. I had a lot of friends that graduated from me at Chelsea High School that were either killed or just really knocked around and hurt by a couple of my best friends that were, they'd be going through and throwing grenades in foxholes. I mean, that's not what I do. Worst thing I ever had to do was go through a big, long mined harbor, and it's with those beep, that sonar beep. And my job when we went to general quarters, which is when we were at war, my job was to look at the map that was in front of me, and if a bomb or a mine hit a certain area, I had to tell them where to turn off the water so we didn't sink. So like no pressure there. And so we went up that harbor. We went between, it was between the Gulf of Tonkin and Haiphong Harbor, and we had mined that channel. And so we're going, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But no, I got people, that, I mean, you get spit out a little bit sometimes, and you get you people that were inviting you to parties before you went in act like they don't know you anymore, don't want you around, because I was a kind of a hippie boy when I went in.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work out for him.
Well, thanks for your service, Sean.
Oh, sure.
I mean,
It worked
I
out
appreciate
okay. I mean, it worked out okay because I'll tell you, I went back to school on the GI Bill. I went to graduate school and I took writing, and that's how I learned really how to write novels and write book length stuff. So it worked out. It worked out fine. It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, So when you came home from the Navy,
Mhm.
um, what was life like then? Like, what was your spread? And I'm sure you were getting ready for something then. What?
Yeah, I went to graduate school at Central State in Edmond. It was Central State then. It's what, University of Central Oklahoma or something now. But they had a woman they had the best writing program in the state, and that's what I looked around for. They had a woman named Marilyn Harris, written a book called Hatter Fox. It had been an NBC movie, and she was a big writer from this part of the country, and she was the writer in residence there. And so I went back and I started going to graduate school full time and doing a little side work and stuff. And again, the GI Bill paid for most of my graduate school. And I got a graduate degree in 1977. I was living in Edmond at the time.
Yeah, where'd you go after that? After you graduated?
Let's see, where did I go? I taught English and let's see, I taught English and American literature at what was then Oscar Rose Junior College. I was on the faculty there for a couple of
Where's
years.
that at?
Midwest, Del City, Oklahoma. It's now
Oh, so
Rose
you
State
you were in
College.
Oklahoma City for a while.
I was in Edmond. I was in
Edmond.
Edmond for graduate school, and I stayed living in Edmond when I got that gig at Del City. Yeah, and then I Janice came along, and I met Janice, my wife. Now we've been married 46 years, 47 years. Got married in 79. And I'd always wanted to write. She was just getting started on a teaching career, teaching special ed. And so I quit my position and we moved back here to rural Foyle, which I tell people is redundant, rural Foyle, Oklahoma. And she started her career. My mom lived about 5 miles away, so that was the reason we came back here. And I started writing, and she started teaching. And a couple of years later, I got an offer to be the country music writer at the Tulsa World.
That's
And
kind of where the name that's where the household name in Tulsa, John Wooley, started.
I guess if there is, yeah, if it ever was, yeah, I was doing a lot of work from '83 to 2006.
Dad, I think this is kind of something maybe like on this Tulsa world. If you could kind of maybe ask a few questions about that. I got this list we made earlier. I want to go after that, but Dad, you were around, so you want to? Is there some stuff you want to ask about when Wooly
You
first
remember
started
what?
the
Yeah,
world?
you remember what you were what band you were in when we met? Was it the one with Chittum?
No, I think it's before that. Gee, I can't remember, John.
Yeah, yeah.
I just can't remember.
I
May
can't.
have been my band, but it may have been Ken Downing's band. God, I don't know. I played in a lot of them.
Well, it would have been the early to mid '80s. So what were you doing? What were you?
Mike Moore big band. My me and Bennett was playing, and I played in the Philharmonic. And I played in I was a sub for the Tulsa University of Tulsa faculty brass quintet. I played a lot of stuff. So
Wait,
I just can't remember. You've always been around. It seems like,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know. I know my dad. I'll tell you this, Heath. You'll like this. My dad loved your stuff. He said he'd call me and he'd go, "Oh, Wooly's article wasn't in this week. I'm missing him." I said, "Well, yeah. What about Wooly?" And he said, "Man, I read them concert things he writes." He said, "I can hear the music. I can smell the pot. Everything, man." He said he
Oh, that's
loved
nice of
he
you.
loved your writing. He said, "Yeah, I understand what he's saying." And
Oh,
so,
that's sweet. I appreciate that.
So when you
did
first
you
got
have?
to the Tulsa world, what was your first like interview with someone famous? Like something that happened, you were like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm doing something I've on another level I haven't done before."
Well, I'd been a disc jockey at that little one lung radio station in Claremore that was KWPR at the time, William Penn Rogers, but it was the WPR, which we had to call the voice of the Will Rogers Metroplex. And so I was on the voice of the Will Rogers Metroplex. I remember interviewing Ernest Tubb, came to town. I interviewed him, and I interviewed Merle Travis as my capacity. Those are really the first two big interviews I did. And then right before I got to the Tulsa world, I was interviewing people like Billy Jack Wills. He had moved back to Bob's youngest brother. He'd moved back here. I interviewed Al Clauser at that particular time, who was a big Western swing guy, the guy that really discovered Patty Page or gave her start. And so I'd interviewed some people, but the first one I remember interviewing actually face to face when I got the gig was Johnny Rodriguez.
Yeah.
There was a place called Tulsa City Limits, which was an outgrowth in 80, was it 80 when Urban Cowboy came along, the movie?
Yeah, that's right.
All these dance clubs came along. Well, this looked like it was an aircraft hangars out there on 123rd, 123rd, was it, or 129th? 129th. It was a huge place. And Johnny Rodriguez was playing there. And I came in and he had me come in his bus and we had the most wonderful interview. I thought, this is a pretty good way to make a living. And so I probably, and one of the books I hope to do before I go is a book called Moth Against the Stars, which will be my like celebrity encounters and stuff that I'd like to talk about that I've had over the years, which I've had a ton of them, and just because I was able to do that for a living.
What was Billy Jack Wills like?
He's great. He was a plumber. His thing, and Steve, this. He was really doing. He was up at Wills Point when Bob, bought Wills Point up at Sacramento, California. Billy Jack had the band that was in Wills Point in the early '50s. It's Tiny Moore on the mandolin, and gosh, who was it? I think it was Tommy Perkins was playing drums.
Park was playing drums. Yeah.
And several other really, really good people.
Vance Terry.
Vance Terry was a steel player. That's exactly right. And he had a bass player and a horn player. But they had reissued some of his old records. Well, when I got to interviewing him, he was very kind of circumspect about one part of it. I said, well, how come you didn't stay in the business? Well, what had happened, and Steve, you know this, what had happened, Bob Wills had come up there and raided his band. He'd taken Tiny, he'd taken a couple of the others, and just, and that was that. And he had apparently it was kind of almost a proto rock and roll band in some ways up there. And then Bob came along, and then after that, he just kind of drifted out of Billy Jack kind of drifted out of the business. But he was the first one of the Wills family that I met. Went down to Shawnee, where his niece lived. He was down there with her, and I'll never forget. I wasn't even with the paper at the time. I was doing some stuff for OK Magazine. I'll tell you a story about that. But OK Magazine was the Sunday supplement, and we go down where we're supposed to meet him in Shawnee, and he shows up, and he looks like he's doing Entertainment Tonight. He's got on a blue suit, and he's got on this perfectly blocked hat, like we were coming in from, a TV network. But I want to tell you something about writing, if I can. The very first thing I sold to the world before I ever got there, I just sold as a freelance piece. I live pretty close to the totem pole, the world's largest man-made totem pole. I like to tell people that's as opposed to the world's largest naturally occurring totem pole. But what it is, it's the world's largest concrete totem pole. So Ken Jackson was an editor there, and he was a good friend of mine. I'd met him when we moved back here, and I said, I need to make some money. I'd like to try and write some stories for OK Magazine. He said, yeah, they need some. I said, well, he says, let's try about what you know. I said, well, I know about the totem pole. So I'll go down there and interview some people about totem pole. And at that time, there was a little store next to it run by the Holmans, and little kind of dusty little store. And the totem pole, which was in terrible disrepair. It was all, people had littered inside it, and it was all the paint had peeled, and the grass was, and nobody was taking care of it. And this was before the Rogers County Historical Society and some of those other people got into it. So anyway, I go down there, Mrs. Holman, I interview her, and she was kind of a cranky old woman, and I interviewed her, and I interviewed a couple people living around there, and then I wrote this piece on the totem pole and about how it was. In disrepair, kind of like a dinosaur skeleton, looking over the road. And so one Sunday, I go out to the mailbox. It's when you still got your papers delivered in the mailbox. And I opened up the mail, and there was the paper, the Sunday paper, and I opened it up, and OK Magazine. It wasn't even on the cover. It was just a two-page spread inside the magazine. So I said, Janice, I need to go down to the Holmans and give them a copy, let them know that the story's out. That's about a mile down the road. So I got in the car. I turned the corner to go on Highway 28A, which is where it's located. There are cars up and down the side of the road. There are cars pulled in everywhere, all around the store. There are people walking around that totem pole taking pictures of each other. And I walk in, and Mrs. Holman is selling old postcards from the 50s of the and pop. And I said, well, Mrs. Holman, I came down here to let you know that the story's out, but I guess you already know that. And she looks at me, this cranky old woman. She's got tears in her eyes, and she says, this is like it was in 1955. I have never forgotten what responsibility you have when you write a public word.
Wow.
And that was what gave it to me.
That kind of like you felt the power that you had.
Exactly. You felt like and the responsibility, Heath. I mean, that, you just can't say anything comes in your damn head, which unfortunately there's a lot of that going around now. You have to, if you're making any public utterance, whether it's a speech, whether it's writing, whatever it is, you've got to make sure that you're saying what you're supposed to say. And because words have power, and words have meaning, and words have responsibility. So I don't mean to be lecturing about it, but that was a big, big thing for me.
No, I mean, that's what I want to hear,
Yeah.
That's what this is about. It's like, because I've heard, I've actually had a couple business ideas, and one I was talking with this other guy, and it was one, I don't know if it's going to go through, but this guy's a genius, and he sees a problem that nobody else sees, and it's like I can just see that it's like this giant leverage business, like. And when I told him about it, he kind of got a little scared. Like when I told him like the information, when I put it to the point where he saw like how much power he had just with discovering something,
Right.
he was just like scared, and he's like, "Man, I don't know if I want to do that or not. I'm gonna have to call you and like think about it for a couple of weeks." And yeah,
Well,
no,
it's good
I
that
felt that way
he
too.
learned that then. Yeah, it's good he learned it before he got any farther.
You were saying, who were you saying? The Ernest Tubb? Like, that's really cool because
Yeah.
there's not a lot of people that I can interview that has interviewed Ernest Tubb left, I mean, um, and you said him and who else?
Well, and Merle Travis,
Ooh,
who was on all of Hank Thompson's, right? But the Travis picking, he invented Travis picking, this certain style, guitar
yeah.
style.
What was that like? Like, can you remember what it was like
Yeah, I
talking to
mean,
those guys?
it was exciting. I mean, he was still, they were obviously on the second part. Every career has a bell-shaped curve, right? And so these guys were on the other side of it, so they were on the way down rather than on the way up. But still, they were very, very. Both of them were very nice. I remember Ernest Tubb. There was a bunch of us. Yeah, I was on, like I said, KWPR 1,000-watt station, and he got up that night and he had dedicated a song to everybody who'd been on that bus. Little community newspapers. The Roger Stagus was Claremore College paper then, and me, and he had all of our names, and he was sending out songs to us. So he was one of the old school. I mean, my friend Billy Parker, my great friend Billy Parker, learned a great deal from him when he led his band, the Texas Troubadours.
Man, Billy Parker, that's somebody I never got to meet. I've heard a lot about him, but I never really got to meet him.
He was when I was at that little 1,000-watt station, KWPR. Mike Warren was the general manager. One day he told me, he says, "Well, I'm gonna go down." I had a morning shift, and said one day he says, "I'm gonna go down and see Billy Parker," and I said, nobody can be that nice. So I hear him on the radio. Nobody can be that nice.
That's right.
And right. And so Mike goes down. I said, find out what he's really like. So Mike goes down there. He comes back the next day. I'm asking him. I says, Billy Parker really that nice? Mike 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 Warren says, no, he's nicer. He's nicer. I'll tell you a story I told at Billy's eulogy. At Billy's service. I did the eulogy at Billy's service. We did a show called Wooley Wednesday, and it went through a couple of other names, but
I
mostly
watched it. We listened to it every Wednesday. I mean, my dad,
Did you?
that
Oh,
wasn't even
well,
an that wasn't even an option in my house.
you may then remember this because Billy was very big on the notion of saying people's names on the air. People love to hear their names over the radio, which is true. And so he was very good on that. So everybody would call in, and he would send songs out to him. Well, one old boy called in, and I think he was having like a 50th wedding anniversary or something. And he named his wife. He says, "I want to send out the song 'My Woman, My Woman, My Wife' by Marty Robbins to my wife." And we said, "Sure." So we had Marty Robbins. We were playing LPs then a lot of times. So we had the Marty Robbins Greatest Hits LP. We would set it down and started playing it. And unfortunately, we hit, and I don't know if it's me or Billy, it's probably me because I used to cue the records up, hit one cut over. And so when Billy goes through this whole deal about it now for so and so, and they're celebrating, and we put the needle down, and it's Marty Robbins' Devil Woman. It was great. And Steve, you remember Blub's thing, right? That's the most, that is, of all of the things that we did on Woolly Wednesday, the Blub thing is just probably the funniest thing, I think. So Glenn Reese, Blub, who you guys of course knew very, very well, he got sick. And he was sick. This like in February or something before the Bob Wills birthday thing was happening at the Canes. And there was some question, whether or not he was actually going to make it because he's pretty ill. And so Billy would just let anybody call him, put him on the air. We didn't have any 7-second delays or anything, And Glenn was kind of the sort of guy who would pretty much say what was on his mind and not really think too much about the consequences. So we're talking to him, and he says, "Well, I just called up you guys, let everybody know that I've been pretty sick, but I'm gonna be able to make it to the Bob Wills birthday thing this year. So make sure that let everybody know that." I said, "Okay, well, we're sorry you've been sick." And he says, "Yeah," he says, "I've had diarrhea for 9 days." Well, Billy and I start laughing, and we can't. And then the next time up, if you remember, Roy Ferguson from Roy and Candy's Music would always come in with, he'd just do something off the cuff. He always wanted to call in. He didn't have a prepackaged commercial or anything. He'd call, "Well, that's what we got for sale day." First, so he calls in right after Bluff. And he calls in, and the first thing out of his mouth is, "Well, kindly sounds like old Blub needs some cheese, don't it?" So we start laughing again. And then Blub's family calls us and just chews us out because don't you know that he's been sick? He's been about to die, and you all are laughing at him. Well, we couldn't help it.
I think Blub from the stories I heard of Blub, like that's just like the company he kept. It sounds.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I love Blub. Like my favorite like sax solos in Western swing, and it's like, I get it. Like Blub's melodical, like he didn't have as many scales as like some of your modern jazz guys, but I don't care. Like he's still my favorite sax player on that because it's just like so. It sounds like a dirty joke when he's playing. He was like,
You're absolutely right, and kind of sang that same way too. If you hear some of that stuff that he did at Cheryl Cummins' place, what was that? What was
Caravan?
That? Caravan. You hear some of the stuff he sang at. He wasn't a bad singer. He sang at Caravan, but he had that same kind of. He sang like a dirty sax player. Yeah. And he was a big jazz guy. He knew his jazz stuff too.
Oh yeah,
he loved to hear jazz sax. Yeah.
Oh yeah, little Glenny, man. I got to hear some of his stories, and I mean, I can tell you those like once we turn the cameras off. Like,
I've heard some of them.
Man. And
you need to draw a veil over a few of those. Yeah.
He was not scared to just get up and start telling stories, And
we had Steve. You played at his funeral, didn't you? Didn't you play? Yeah.
No, but I went to the funeral with Ron Chandler and Billy Dozier.
I thought that you played with Roy at that. That was the craziest funeral I've ever. It was in a
gymnasium, Collinsville Gymnasium. Yeah, me and Ron and Billy were there.
And they had him. Well, I was doing some of the announcing, or I did a eulogy. I can't remember what it was, but they had his casket on wheels. You remember? and that floor was uneven, and he kept rolling. We play music, and here he'd come like rolling, rolling by. It was amazing.
That's
Yeah,
probably exactly the story Blub would have wanted for his funeral.
exactly. It's probably how he wanted to go out.
He'd
That's
probably
right.
be, roll it a little more, boys.
Yeah, right. That's right.
So what
There's nobody like Blood, man.
I'm, I'm talking to you. It sounds like we're kind of creeping up into the 90s and that era. Is it
Right.
kind of your next era? You're probably at that time starting to pump out some more, some bigger stuff and
Lots as well. I was writing books all the time. My first book got published in '83 called Old Fears. I wrote with Ron Wolf as a horror novel. Got snapped up by Wes Craven. We thought he was going to make it, and we got some option money. It didn't happen. It was been optioned for years and years off and on from different people. And we got option money, but that's all. But so I was writing novels and comic book stories and stuff before I ever joined the Tulsa World. But you remember? No, you don't remember, but Steve does. In the '90s, Oklahoma really suddenly took off as far as country music acts. You had Ronnie Dunn, you had Garth, you had Vince, you had Reba, you had Toby Keith, you had Ricochet, you had Joe Diffie. All of these guys just took off, and I was the country music writer as well as the local music writer. And I had, boy, that was just, especially with Garth, it was like just grabbing a comet by the tail. And I'll tell you, when Garth was selling out, he sold out, what was it, 5 or 6 shows at old Driller Park out on 15th and Yale.
Yeah, remember
And
that.
I mean, he sold them out in like 8 minutes or something. It was insane. It was the early '90s, and I remember at that time the phone lines, when they opened up the phone lines for tickets, with Garth, they got so many calls that it took down the 911 number. Nobody could call 911. It was just amazing. So we had an editor. Less said about him, the better. But my editor was Kathy Logan. We had an editor who wasn't crazy about local music, which is really the reason I ended up leaving the paper. But my entertainment editor loved local music, and so she came to me and she said, "Well, our Joe, who was our executive editor, he knew how nothing worked in the entertainment business, and he said he wants an interview with Garth." Well, the secret is, and it's not that much of a secret, you almost always did phone interviews with acts because, number one, if you waited till they got there, it really didn't do them any good because they're trying to sell tickets. Doesn't really do you any good because it's after the fact. But if you call in advance, there's like a symbiosis that goes on. They get to sell a few more tickets because of the story coming out, and you get a story in advance. So Garth had sold all these tickets. Hell, he didn't need me. He didn't need to have a story in the Tulsa World at all. So I said, well, Kathy, he's sold out. He didn't need to talk to us. And Kathy said, well, Joe says, he's leaning on it. Says, Joe really wants you to do that. So I call up, and his Bob Doyle at the time was his manager, I believe. And I said, Bob, I know Garth is awful busy. I know he's already sold out. My editors want to know if I can get an interview with him. And he said, oh, man. I said, John, I don't know. He says, he's got so much. And I was the first person to say, I had reviewed his first show at Tulsa City Limits 1989 when I predicted could be the next best big thing in country music. He has to his credit, Garth has always remembered that. We've done a couple of little things together through the years, and he's always remembered that. Well, so Bob Doyle says, let me see what I can do. I don't imagine we can do it. Let me see what I can do. About an hour or two later, phone rings. It's Bob Doyle, and he says, Garth will call you tomorrow at 12:30. Well, I'm sitting there at my desk, 12:30, right on the dot. Phone rings. John, it's Garth. And I said, well, Garth, I got to tell you, before we start this interview, I know you don't have to do it. And I know you sold out all these shows. I said, I just want to let you know on a personal level how much it means to me for you to do this. And he says, oh, John, we go back before those sold out concerts, don't we?
Wow.
And that's the kind of guy I think Brooks is. I mean, he's just, yeah. And that was amazing. And Vince Gill, the story on Vince Gill. So back in the 70s, Steve, you remember when Vince Gill opened with Mountain Smoke opened for Kiss? Yeah. And Moon the Crowd. because they just, they were a last minute replacement for somebody, and they get up there and they're doing bluegrass, and this is 75 or 76, and the Kiss Army's out there, and they're not wanting any bluegrass band. And so they're throwing, and Vince is like 17 or something at the time, and he just goes to the edge of the stage and drops his pants and moons them and then goes up. Well, curtain falls and time passes, and in the early 90s, RCA is grooming him as a solo act. And so he's coming to Tulsa City Limits. And I get on the phone with him and we talk about that thing and how he had mooned the crowd and all of this. And it's good, it makes for a good little story. A lot of people didn't know it. And my editor, Kathy, came up with a great headline, which was Vince Gill returns to Oklahoma. This time he's facing the audience. So I'm out watching the show, reviewing the show, and sitting up on the second story. You remember Tulsa City Limits had that little second story kind of balcony out there, and I'd take my notes from there with Chuck Proctor, who booked all that stuff. And all of a sudden, Vince is up and he starts to say something, and he just breaks down laughing, and he's looking back at the back of the house, which I can't see because it's underneath where I'm sitting. So I go downstairs, and back in the back, these people have unfurled this huge banner, and it says, "Hey Vince, play Moon River." Oh, so there you go.
Now it's probably like, just half of the shows out there, people aren't wearing pants anyway nowadays.
Well, it could be. It's a good point. Yeah, things have changed a little bit.
Man, the Garth Brooks story is pretty cool. The fact that it's like people, there's the whole Chris Gaines and stuff, and it's like,
right.
That was his crisis and everything. It's like, well, you think?
It wasn't his crisis. All you have to know about Garth, I think. Now, of course, that sounds kind of pompous. Garth Brooks is an advertising major, Heath. He knows if you don't change your packaging every 5 or 6 years, people just start taking you for granted. That's why he did it. That's why he played, he was in spring training with the Kansas City Royals. That's why he did all these different things, because he knows that it's like Campbell's soup. If they don't change their label every so many years, people are going to forget about it. And
well,
so
I didn't know much about the Chris Gaines thing. I guess I was just saying, like, man, how could it's just like handling all that stress and pressure, like, that Garth had. Like, I wonder, I'm sure there's been some times he's like, what am I doing?
Oh yeah. But he's always wanted to be. He wanted to be. When Matt O'Melia, his old drummer. Do you know Matt?
No, I don't.
Matt O'Melia's drummer is Jay O'Melia's son, the sculptor. Jay O'Melia, the sculptor. But Matt is a drummer. He's with the Hi-Fi Hillbillies right now. But he was with Garth's band, Santa Fe. And he says they're driving, and he wrote a book called The Road Out of Santa Fe. And he says he's driving back from some gig with Garth, and Garth just turns to him all of a sudden, and Garth is a kid. Garth's at OSU, and Garth turns to him and says, Matt, I want to be America's band. And that's what he became. He had a huge drive. Of course, it's like you, Heath. I mean, your dad's a musician. My grandmother was a writer. And his mom, Garth's mom, was on Capitol Records as a vocalist. So he comes by kind of naturally.
Man, I loved Garth's old stuff. Like, I still think it's some of the best country music out there to dance to, especially.
Yeah. No,
I don't know if he gets the credit for his vocals. I think he's a great vocalist, and I don't ever really hear anybody say that. But my gosh,
no, they don't, because he does so many things so well. He's a fine songwriter. He's a great songwriter.
Whenever you were talking about him being Chris Gaines, my ignorance, I always thought, well, he probably dug Leon Russell, because Leon was Hank Wilson. And I thought, man, maybe he just copied Leon on
doing a little turnaround like that. Yeah, he just looked to do something that would draw attention and would change his image a little bit. And it seems pretty obvious to me. But that was a wonderful time when Oklahoma just had country music locked up for some
reason. Brooks and Dunn, I'm sure you interviewed them.
Ronnie, God bless him. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, Ronnie has to be one of the monster vocalists of country music.
Jiminy, he played around here a lot. as a solo with what, like the Screaming Ranch Band and the Pickups, and he was a solo artist around here for a very long time. Halsey had him, Halsey put him on he was on a couple of singles on I believe it was Halsey's label, wasn't it? That what was that?
Yeah, I couldn't remember that, but
Well,
Yeah, I
Danny
think it was
McBride told me.
Churchill Records.
Danny McBride told me he was on one of those bands you were talking about.
He sure was. Danny was on that. Danny was guitarist on maybe on that band. Danny may have been a guitarist on that band that he took to the Marlboro Talent Contest and won the
I
national.
think he was, and
I
Ricky
think he
Morton.
was. You see, that was Jamie Oldacre on the drum. That was basically the band that became the Tractors. That's what it was.
Yeah,
But
that's right. That's
behind it. Yeah.
And this
Only
probably about the time you start running into Ripley about this time in your life is.
No, I knew Ripley from. We were both disc jockeys at KVRO on the OSU campus. We were both on the rock and roll station on the OSU campus. We both had bands, and we would get with each other and play cassettes of our bands for one another. I knew Steve probably from about 68 or 69.
What was it like when all that tractor stuff was going on? I'm sure you were probably involved in.
Oh, it was great. It was great. I remember, Steve was funny. Steve, and you played on the first one, Steve.
now I played like on the second and third one.
Oh, you were on weren't you on the Tulsa Shuffle? You didn't play. Were you play on Tulsa Shuffle?
I can't remember what I played on.
I remember you were on them, and Ripley was just obsessed with the notion that I was gonna treat it like, well, this is just not another Tulsa band, kind of thing. It's like, Steve, no, I know it, and but Steve was funny that way. He had a long time to get to where he was, and I get that because sometimes those Tulsa guys. Also, he'd worked for Leon. And those Tulsa guys have really put a big shield, a lot of them, around themselves. I mean, it took me 20 years to interview J.J. Cale. He had to talk to every musician in town to make sure I was okay because they didn't trust writers. They didn't trust the media, as it were. And once I talked to Cale, hell, it's like talking to you guys. But I had to be vetted. Same thing with Leon. Not with Steve so much because he knew me, but it was still a little bit that way with Steve.
And Ripley was my story with Ripley was like kind of funny because it started off with like me and him always like argued over Facebook and stuff.
Right.
And
He can argue.
And also I was like, I was young, so I'm like, oh, cool, a famous guy who gets triggered of everything I say. Like, this is awesome. So we would just go back and forth, right? And then one day he saw I was playing in Stillwater. He's like, why don't you come back by the farm? And I'm like, all right. And me and Maxwell, I think maybe Ryan Shepard was there. I don't know. He spent about 4 hours and it was like we were best friends.
Yeah.
And
yeah, he was funny.
As soon as I got back home, the internet stuff just continued like we had we had never even sat down for 4 or 5 hours and told me I was welcome back. And
it was really funny. When he did his solo album in 2004, out of the blue, he called me and he says, you want to play Reach for a Lyric? I said, what's that? He said, I want some help writing this song. And he wrote a song called Gone Away. And he said, it's about nostalgia stuff and all of this. And can you help me with some verses? So I sent a bunch of stuff. And he used a little bit of it, enough. I think I got 10% of the song or something. Oh, wow. And Tim Dubois, I think, got 10% of the song. He provided something. Tim, of course, had been the head of Ariston Nashville. He was out of Locust Grove and had put together the band Restless Heart and done a bunch of stuff. So anyway, we do this, but the thing about it is this is a national album, so I've got to get a publishing company. So I put together my own publishing company. I always wanted to do that ever since the Beef Squad days, called Laugh Thought I'd Die Publishing. And I got it. Ripley had a guy from BMI down in Nashville that he used. And so I got hooked up with the same guy, $150, started a publishing company. So Gone Away, you remember that song, Steve, Gone Away, that had Debbie singing back up on it?
I can't remember. I would if you played it, yeah.
And I play organ. I play the Vox organ on it. He had me come in and do it.
I remember that. I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was his first single off that album. And it goes out and it's being played everywhere. And it's just great. I get my first royalty check from BMI and it's 81 cents. 81-cent royalty check. That's the first and only royalty check I ever got out of it. So I'm still in the hole, like what, $149 and
17 cents.
9 cents, yeah, or whatever it is. Yeah, yeah.
That's how it works. I think I've got like 100. I think I make enough off Spotify every year just to keep my Spotify going.
Yeah, well, yeah,
You know, like it pays for my Spotify.
but even then, if you get 25 bucks, I mean, you can buy groceries. I've always just marveled at when I write something, I get money for it,
Yeah.
because you can you take that money for something that came out of your head and you can go down and buy groceries with it. I've
Yeah,
never
isn't that
gotten
the
over that.
truth?
I'm 77 years old. I've never gotten over that.
Yeah, I still can't believe I get paid to play music.
Exactly. It's the same thing exactly. It's like, they're going to catch up with us someday. But
Ripley, Steve Ripley, before we get off of Ripley, for whatever quirks he had, which we all do, he was a family man
yep,
and he was honest.
you
He
bet
was
he
an
was.
honest guy,
Bet he was.
and and I'll go to the floor with anybody that wants to argue those points.
Yeah.
He was straight arrow
He
and
was a straight arrow. He had a good heart. He had a very good heart.
And
good guy. I mean, he was a good guy. I liked Ripley,
I
and
did too.
he has
he'd
nice
love you.
kids too.
Yeah, he'd love
His
you and
kids are
hate you
nice.
and hate you and love you and all. I mean, same old thing with everybody. But yeah, God bless him. He still should be here.
I agree. I agree.
So we're so what were you doing, when the 2000s rolled in, around 2000, 2010?
Ooh,
You
pretty
know,
much the same thing, except 2010, your dad and I got something together. Before we do that, can I tell you about my favorite interview
of
that I
course.
did?
Of course.
This is
Ooh,
going to be the lead story in Moth Against the Stars once I ever get this written. Once I ever get it written. So I was interviewing Ray Charles, and people would always ask me, you part of your job is interviewing celebrities. Were you ever intimidated by a celebrity? I came close face to face with Johnny Cash. That's pretty powerful. And I came very close face to face with John Carradine, I
yeah.
who I grew up with watching on Shock Theater on the old Universal horror movies, and I got to meet him. But the one I really think I really cherish is Ray Charles. This probably in the '90s. I know it's in the '90s, or maybe it's the early 2000s that you're talking about. When was Mbop? When did that take off? But with Hanson,
Jeez.
late '90s,
Hold
early
on, I
2000s.
can remember.
It was right around that area, I think, right
Okay,
around there.
so I remember I was the same age as the youngest Hanson.
Okay, all
Like
right,
my sister and all my cousins had a crush on him. So like I knew like age, hair color, eye color, all
right,
this stuff, right?
right.
We would like drive by their house, like,
Uh-huh.
right, just to like see it. Um, so I think I was 11 and I was born in 87.
All right, 97,
So
90,
like
so late
98.
90s, late
Yes.
90s. Yeah, so this is what I'm interviewing because Ray Charles didn't, I don't think he saw 2000, so I think he did die in the 90s, I believe. Anyway, he was coming to what was then the Brady Theater and did the phone interview. Well, I called him and I said, Mr. Charles, do you know Bob Wills' music? Are you kidding? Of course I know Bob Wills. They said, yeah, oh, yeah. I said, well, it occurs to me that he did the same thing coming the other way that you did. You came from rhythm and blues, and you added country music. He came from hillbilly music, and he added blues and rhythm and blues and horns. And I said, he was a big blues guy. His favorite singer was Bessie Smith. And Ray Charles says, no, he says, I didn't know that. He says, you know who my favorite singer was? And I said, no, sir, I don't. He says, Grandpa Jones.
No kidding.
I said, Grandpa Jones? He said, yeah. He says, when I was a little boy, my mom would let me stay up and listen to Grand Ole Opry, and I loved Grandpa Jones. Well, so we talked a little bit more, and I never would go. I wasn't a backstage, if people wanted me to come backstage, if they asked me, I'd say sure, but I wasn't going to say, hey, Mike, come, I didn't do anything. So he says, I'd like to meet you. He said, would you come backstage after the show? And I'd like to meet you. I said, sure, I'd be glad to. Because we really had gotten along and really kind of hit it off on that. So that night, backstage after the show, the Hansons are there. wanting to get their picture taken with Ray Charles, of course, because Mbop, and I remember Mbop had just taken off. And they're back there, a bunch of people milling around backstage, and I was back there with a copy of the story and newspaper story. And the road manager comes out of the green room and he says, "I'm sorry, folks." He says, "Mr. Charles isn't feeling very well. He's not going to be able to see anybody tonight, or he's not going to be able to meet anybody. I don't think he's seen anybody." And so I walk up. I said, "Well," I said, "that's fine." I said, "Tell Mr. Charles hello for me. This is the story I wrote." I told him I'd bring him a copy of it. He says, "Okay, yeah, sure, great, thank you." So he goes back in, and I'm getting ready to leave. And Gary Bentley, who owned Tulsa City Limits, he was there, and I think he had some money in that show or something. So I stopped and I'm visiting with him, and the door opens the green room. The road manager sticks his head out and says, "Hey, that journalist still here?" I said, "Yes, I'm over." He says, "Mr. Charles wants to see you." So here I go in there, and I'm telling you guys, it's like he's Ray Charles. He's got on like this tan leisure suit with the chocolate accents, and he's got the wraparound sunglasses. And he grabs my hand with both of his, and he says, "You remembered, you remembered." And I said, "Well, of course I did, Mr. Charles. I'm so glad to be back here. Thank you. It's great to meet you. An honor to meet you going on. Yeah. Well, what'd you think about the show?" I said, "Mr. Charles," he still got a hold of my hand. He says, "What'd you think about the show?" I said, "Well, Mr. Charles, I got to tell you, I was a little bit disappointed."
Ooh.
And he says, "You were?" And I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "I was there from the very beginning. I saw the whole show, and you didn't do one Grandpa Jones song." And he starts up Ray Charles laugh, rocking back and forth. You hear him in Bristow, and he gets nose to nose with me. He says, "Man, you got to have the right kind of cats to play that shit." And I thought, I will always remember what Ray Charles told me.
Man, that's a great story.
Dad,
you played a night with Ray, right?
Yeah, played a gig with him, and I played tuba on that, and they dug it, man. I was scared. I brought
where was it? Where'd you play?
It's Mayfest. They run underneath one of them bridges, but anyhow, he dug the horns, man, and I asked him if I said, "I'd like to get our picture made with you." And he said, "Yeah, come back to the hotel." So we went to the hotel. He was telling jokes, and I told him, got a picture made. And I said, "Mr. Charles, I had this dream about you last night." He said, "Yeah, come on, man." I said, "Well, you woke up in the morning and you had your sight." He goes, "Yeah, praise Jesus." And I go, "But here's the kicker to the dream." I said, "The Rayettes were white." And he went nuts. He was getting loud and laughing. And
Right, yeah.
I'm glad Bennett wasn't on the gig because it got into joke telling. And yeah, Bennett's got about 10,000 of them. But Ray Charles just as nice as he could be. We just had a ball.
Yeah, I loved the man. The little 5-10 minutes I spent with him, it just was great. Absolutely great.
Just, I always play the kids at school. I said, "You're going to hear, oh, beautiful." This is the way we used to sing it. And nobody does that song like Ray. That's it.
No, he's terrific.
So 2010, you guys did a collaboration.
We did. And we should have done it more places. We kind of put it together where we were hoping we'd get in other places with it, but we only did one, and it was called, I pulled it from my files.
I've got it too.
The Tulsa Sound Meets the British Invasion.
I remember.
I was
God, that was a good show.
I played guitar. I played guitar on it too.
Did you?
Yeah. Remember, it was me and Frank Brown and
yeah,
Tina Rose.
Agsby.
That's right.
Agsby and Brady. Was Brady on it?
Yeah.
Bennett. I mean, the whole crew.
Lindy, Gary Lindy was on it.
Yeah.
I'm looking here and see. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I remember that's when I learned. I don't even know if I have a pick. I remember I learned.
Good show.
I remember I learned this for it, and Frank wound up playing it, but as a.
Better get out your capo.
Yeah, I learned that song or that little lick from that. And
well, according to this, you sang Milk Cow Blues.
I guess I did.
Yeah, you were the vocalist of Milk Cow Blues. Yeah.
I'd like to have a copy of that show.
Boy, I would too. I would. T-Guard.
Yeah, how come I didn't do anything? What we do wrong?
Well, it was supposed to be a one-off deal, because Peter Mayo had his Brady Theater Orchestra for the second half of it. And we did the first half, and then they did Beatles songs for the second half. But we pitched it. You remember we put it together? I put together a little pitch I've got here, and
Yeah.
we just couldn't get anybody else to do it again because it cost them too much money.
Didn't we do weren't you on the Curly Lewis tribute show too? We did.
I was the announcer on the Curly Lewis.
That's what I thought. And
Yeah, yeah,
that was a, I remember we took a break and Curly motioned for me to come to the table. I wasn't going to go to the table because he had people, and
yeah,
he said, he had his voice was kind of messed up in. He
yeah.
said, "Hey, do that song me and Edie love." I said, "What song?" And he wanted me to do Wonderful World. And we
Wow.
did it, and he cried.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because Edie was Edie was in the memory unit at that point. And
That's right.
yeah, that brings back a real special, most of those nights are really special memories for me.
That was a wonderful night, and the people that some of those people they didn't last that much longer. Like Roy, Roy coming in and playing and what was we all sang. I got to sing one of the verses on that last hymn that we did. You remember? Was it farther along?
It was farther
Was
along.
it farther along? Yeah, yeah. And that was just beautiful. Of course, Curly sang it on the John Lee Wills, that album called Tulsa Swing, that Flying Fish, no, Rounder put out, I guess, where it's the transcriptions of the disc of the some of the songs from the transcription discs they did, and Curly sings farther. Curly and the trio sing farther along on that.
He was a great, great, great vocalist.
Well, he was a great vocalist, a great fiddler, and just a talk about wonderful guys. I loved Curly Brooks.
He became my bandmate. I just still can't get over all that.
Yeah.
Curly Lewis.
Why don't you guys bring up Eldon Shamlin too while we're at it?
Oh my goodness. Eldon was the funniest guy in the world. He would come in, he'd be plugging in his amp, and he'd be saying stuff. And Steve, saying stuff like, "I don't know why we'll get to this damn music business." And he'd just be grousing and complaining, and it was amazing. And I remember him talking about Merle Haggard, because Merle would always get him to play whenever Merle came to this part of the country. Him and Tiny Moore would play on Merle's concerts.
Yeah, good move.
Yeah, and do you remember Eldon? He says, "Man, that Merle Haggard's the saddest cat I ever saw in my life." And I had never seen anyone sadder than that cat. He's a sad man. He was such a funny guy.
Merle had a pretty open cocaine habit that he was pretty open to share with the world too. I mean,
really?
I
never. By the time we knew him, I think he was done with that. I don't think I ever even saw him take a drink. Steve, did you?
Merle Haggard?
I wasn't around him hardly,
Oh, are you talking about Haggard? Or
Haggard.
I'm sorry.
It's like he probably just caught him at the wrong time.
Oh no, Eldon. He was this during the Kern River period, where I think Merle was smoking a lot of wacky tobacco at that point. It was kind of bringing him down a little bit, and I think that's probably what. But on the other hand, you could tell for all of his talk that he loved what he was doing, and Rolling Stone called him the greatest rhythm guitar player in the world.
Oh, I mean,
he may have been.
I mean, it's a very elementary version, but when I was in school, I learned all the.
We can't hear your guitar.
Yeah, I can't either.
Can't hear it.
Nope. Can't hear your guitar. We see your finger and we can't hear it.
Let's see. Hold on. Can you hear me now? Am I loud? Am I breaking up?
No.
I don't hear it. Your voice is good.
Nope.
Nope.
Well, I don't know. Yes, that's weird. But you can
Yeah,
hear my voice.
Yeah, we can hear your voice. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I learned all the Eldon Shamlin stuff. He had that video that he did. I don't know if you see it. It's still out there on YouTube. But John, there's one thing, like, kind of the thing I really wanted to talk to you about, because it was my childhood, was the Red Dirt upcome, with the, I mean, my opinion, my favorite band, and I think he would have been way more famous if he would have came out like in the midst of it rather than before. is Mike McClure's Great Divide. You know, they were freaking awesome. I mean,
Still
they're
are. They still are. I mean, they're still
monsters.
doing good work. And I don't know how much you heard of the Mike McClure band, which he
Oh,
always after he left the Great Divide, he would he it was more of a rock and roll kind of thing, and he would always say, it's twice as loud and half as popular.
it's it had that song,
That's a
"Something's
great
coming in
one.
the distance, baby, I
Yeah.
can
Oh
hear
yeah.
rolling down the line." And
Oh,
who was
he's
the
terrific.
and
Yeah.
who was the
Yeah.
guitar player for that down here, just north of Austin area? What was his name? Oh
Well, there
God,
was
I'm gonna look it up.
he had those two. He had the two brothers playing. He had
Ronnie,
JJ
Ronnie's.
and Scotty Lester were in the band, or the two guitarists in the band, brothers, in Great Divide. I can't think of who the
Well,
other
no, this
people.
was on his album. Ronnie's. I'm gonna tell you this, and we're all gonna know.
Okay,
I think
Seemed like Kelly
Rodney
Green was in
Pyatt.
the band.
Rodney Pyatt. You
I
know
don't know
Rodney
Rodney
Pyatt?
Pyatt.
Oh,
Rodney
really?
No,
Pyatt is a monster from down here, like north of Austin, and
yeah,
I mean, he just plays with everybody, like on the records. I'm sure, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he was kind of like in with Lloyd Maines and kind of that
right,
crew who just
right,
records on monster albums, or
right,
something.
right.
But that guitar playing in Mike McClure's album from Rodney Pyatt was just crazy.
Well, as far as McClure goes, and the Great Divide, they were a big part of that package that packed the stadium at OSU 4 nights
Yeah,
in a row.
yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
they still got plenty of mileage. And here's the thing, and I'm learning this because I'm working. I think I told you earlier. Just finished the first draft of a book with the Red Dirt Rangers. It's called Red Dirt Roads, and it's all about the Red Dirt scene. They were there before McClure, before Cody, before Jason Boland, before any of them, and are still there, and they're all still friends. But part of the thing about the Red Dirt guys is they're not interested in being real famous. That's not their goal. They're not chasing the neon rainbow, as Alan Jackson would say. They're just making music and making a living and having some fun, and they're not chasing fame like others might. That's one of the characteristics of that movement.
Never knew that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Well, and
absolutely.
also too, though, if you're part of Red Dirt, I kind of understand it because, like, down here in Texas, like, it's a machine. Like, you could be like part of the Red Dirt movement and still come down here and hit, like, you know Austin, and then 5 days later you might hit San Antonio and still not run out of a place to play, like some
Right, right.
farm ranch. I mean, down here we have all these German dance halls, which if you ever come down here, I'd like to show you. So I'm sure you've been to them, but they're just so cool. Some of them
Yeah.
were German polka dance halls before they were even country dance halls,
Mhm,
and the
mhm.
Germans settled this part of Texas.
Yeah, yeah,
It
right,
was
right.
the most spoken language in Texas until they Mexico started recruiting Anglo white Anglos from the South for plantations and all that. But yeah,
Now
it's
most of them just speak Texan, don't they?
yeah now, but used to it was weird because, like, there's a whole part on the hill country where it was Germans, and then the Anglos started to move in, and they
Yeah.
didn't get along. In fact, during the Civil War, the Confederates slaughtered a bunch of the Germans, and they ran out. They
Mm.
ran out of Texas briefly and came back after the Civil War. Yeah, it was
Well,
quite. There's a lot of
Well,
crazy stories.
I thought Will's music had a lot of polka stuff
sure.
influence. I mean, that's my opinion, but
Well, and schottish, isn't that the same kind of thing too? I mean, the schottishes
uh,
that they did. Right,
God,
right.
I hadn't thought of a shotties for a long time. You used
Yeah.
to have to play them at all them dances, and
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah.
So do you
you used to
remember
have to play
whenever
a
the
lot
Red
of
Dirt
stuff.
Rangers first came out, and then, like, how long was that until, and what did they have to do to prep the scene for, like, you know Mike McClure, and then later Cody Canada
Oh,
and
it was
Boland
it was
and
the whole thing. Well, the whole thing started at the farm, that ranch house that John Cooper rented outside of, or that big old 2-story farmhouse that John Cooper and his friend rented outside of Stillwater. That's where it all went down. That's where they all started coming. And so that would have been, they had that in the 80s, but I think the Rangers kind of got together 89, 90, somewhere in there. I remember reviewing their first record and saying they sounded like the Sir Douglas Quintet had gone a few cervezas over the line, which still I think kind of describes them. But uh, they started it, and for a long time it was just them and Medicine Show that were carrying the banner for Red Dirt throughout much of the '90s. And then the new people. I mean, Garth Brooks was a visitor to the farm. Garth Brooks played music out at the farm. Bob Childers, the godfather of Red Dirt, he lived out there in a trailer. Uh, Cody came in. Mike McClure came in. Mike McClure's got a great story about somehow Bob Childers had heard about him being a pretty good songwriter, and he was going to school at Stillwater at OSU. And Mike McClure says, one day I came home and there's this shirtless hippie. I think he was shirtless, sitting on his front porch. And he says, "Hey, I hear you can write songs. Why don't you come out to the farm and play some of them?" McClure didn't know what to think, but he did, and that's how that got started.
McClure's always been kind of mysterious. I've noticed, like he doesn't
He's
even
mysterious. Yeah.
like he
Yeah.
doesn't even he puts pictures of himself on Facebook, but they're like
Right.
super altered and like weird
Right.
things. And I'm always like, what does he like look like nowadays?
Yeah. He looks good. He looks good. He's doing real. I talked to him maybe. Oh, I guess it's been a year or so now since the last time I talked to him. But he's doing well. He's got I can't remember if it's a girlfriend or a wife. He does a show with her. They do a couple of things. He's working plenty. He's happy as a clam. He's in good shape. He
He's a nice guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he called. Yeah, that's right. He called that thing at Stillwater at the 4 days of the 50,000 tickets a night. He called it the Red Dirt Apocalypse. Which I thought was pretty funny term.
That's
for
cool
it.
though. I bet.
Yeah.
I hope they made good money off that.
Oh yeah, I mean 200,000 people seen him. Jiminy, right about that. I guess it was like 185,000, but biggest concert ever in Oklahoma.
So
That's-
then
That
Cody,
started, that concert started all those athletic directors in colleges around the country to start doing the same thing, putting music in their stadiums to raise money for the athletic department.
Yeah.
I just read that 2
Yeah.
months.
You're
University of Oklahoma is doing it now.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, yeah,
Copy.
because the school made some money. OSU made some money off it. Even that old Gundy announced one of the nights, brought him on one night.
Well, in spite of that, it was probably a pretty good show.
It worked out. That's right. That's right.
And I think he's a pretty good guy too, actually. Just
and then Bolin and Cody Canada, like that's actually how I got started playing and
Yeah.
singing. Is I heard them just like kind of playing in the Wormy Dog, and I was like, man, I think I could have a few beers and do that. Like,
Right. Right, and that's the whole Red Dirt thing. It's like it's camaraderie, it's sharing. It's like the Red Dirt. Right, for instance, Cody, they reformed Cross Canadian Ragweed, and they had Turnpike Troubadours for the headline that show along with Great Divide, and they brought on and Boland and Jason Boland, the Stragglers, and then I'm leaving it, Stoney LaRue, and Stoney LaRue's opening. He brings on the Rangers to do a song with him. And then later on, Cody brings on the Rangers, Du Bois from Oklahoma with them. So they all remember one another. It's that kind of a scene where they all help one another. And that's why they're not stepping over one another to try to get to the top. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Have you heard Bolin's band lately?
Not lately, but maybe
They're like the best band like I've ever heard in my life. Like,
he's always
you know how the Hansons have kind of evolved into that? Like, it's almost like sometimes, I mean, I get it happens how it happens, but like, it's almost a shame that they made it famous when they did and not now, because when I hear their band now, it's like there's very few people who can play together like that. Like that's like they're like Eagles level, and so is Boland.
Yeah.
I went to Boland's, and I mean, it's like the piano was in the pocket, the fiddle was in the pocket, everything was in the pocket all night long. It sounded like a record from start to finish, but it still had that energy. It didn't lose any of that grittiness. It was just
right.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Oh,
And
that's hard. That's hard.
Check this out. Boland now is a monster lead guitar player.
Really?
He's a monster lead guitar player. And when I was younger, he was okay. And I can tell him, like, I bet he just, like, just kept on kind of picking until he just turned himself into a monster.
Yeah, well, that's how they do it. I mean, and I'm sure he got advice from other people. And I've got a poster. We've got a poster in this book, in the Red Dirt Rangers book, of Red Dirt Rangers playing somewhere, and in tiny little print below it says also the Turnpike Troubadours. So they've
Oh
all
wow.
it's just this long kind of. I mean, that's what Cody can't of Crossing Ragway were open for the Rangers for a year or so before they took off.
And Turnpike Troubadours, to me, it's almost like they're like Guns N' Roses. You know how Guns N' Roses was like the ultimate hair metal band? Like they were at the
Right,
end of it.
right,
It's like they
right.
were kind of it. It's like the Turnpike Troubadours. They got a little bit bigger harmonies, a little bit bigger fiddle sound. Like just, you know
Right.
what I mean? Kind of they got to
Yeah,
build off everyone.
yeah, exactly. I think it's a really good way to put it.
Well, I'm here in Austin. Do you know any of these guys? Like, you know, some of the Robert Earl Keen, Pat Green. Have you talked to any of these guys?
I know
Some of
the
the leaders?
I know the Hot Club of Cowtown real well.
Oh yeah.
Those guys. In fact, I have worked with Jake Irwin 2 years ago when I do some cabaret shows with Janet Rutland, and we used Jake Irwin as our bass player back then. And wonderful guy, and I love Hot Club of Cowtown. And as a matter of fact, Whit, they lived here. Whit and his wife lived in Tulsa for a while, and we got to hang out and have a few beers while Whit was here in town. So I know those are the guys that I really, I stay up. I don't stay up with really country. I stay up with Red Dirt and Western Swing is about what I do now. I couldn't tell you, a lot of the current country music acts.
Yeah, no, I mean they're kind of. I don't even know a lot of them now, but you know, I mean, like my dad, you know, they just played with Robert Earl Keen in Lukenbach. When was
Oh,
it, Dad?
4th of July.
Yeah,
oh,
4th of
very good.
July, and yeah, they've really been playing a lot of these Central Texas halls and stuff, which I had, you know, with Alsop and Leon. You know, they
Right,
seemed like they were
right,
always kind of out west and stuff, in some of the bigger cities, but
right,
you know, uh, Sleep at the Wheel. Ray.
right, right. Oh, sure, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so I think we're kind of at a point where it's kind of like, man, y'all can, Dad, you guys can kind of chat and about some old times, and then we can, once you guys are done, we can close it up with your current projects that you're working on, Wooly, or anything you want to talk
Great,
about.
great.
Yeah, so you guys just kind of, I'm gonna go grab another cold water. You guys, I'll be right back. You guys just kind of get going.
So what have you been doing? Where have you been playing? See,
Yes, with the Playboys.
okay. And are they playing a lot?
We hadn't played much this month, but we're getting ready to hook up. And like the 1st of August, we'll be in Arlington and then Houston and then back home. I don't know. I just have to look at the schedule. But I sit here at the house and blow, man. Play a lot. But one thing he didn't say, and I don't know that he knew, but I don't know how many musicians you've helped with your show and with the paper. I know you did a lot of stuff for a lot of people.
Well, that's
And
awfully nice of you, Steve. I just,
you,
I think people deserve to be celebrated. I was in a position to celebrate, and I don't want to get corny about it, but I'll tell you this. Uh, Sometimes you get asked, well, people will say, well, what do you think you put on this earth to do? And that's one of those deals. You have to presume, first of all, you're put on the earth to do anything. And but if you really were, mine was to create as much as I can, to celebrate others' creativity as much as I can, and to live by the golden rule. Those are the three things.
yeah, you're pretty good at it.
Well, those last two, I could be better, but those last two things go together because you treat people. I want people, when they read my books or when they're in a position to talk about my books, I want them to be able to, I want them to do that. And if I want them to do that, then when someone like you's doing music and I get the opportunity to write, well, then that's the golden rule, isn't it? I mean, really. I mean,
Well, you've done beyond and above and beyond. And I know there are musicians that probably didn't treat you right, but you went ahead and did. You went ahead and stepped right over it and treated them well and took care of them. And I remember you talking about your golden rule. I remember I had a sign on my bus. I drove a bus for 21 years at Allen
yeah,
Bowden.
yeah.
One time I was taking first graders on a trip. Didn't want to, but that was part of the gig. So I took these first graders trip. I had this sign up that I said, "Mr. Ham, safe, reliable, and courteous." And this cranky mom got on the bus and she goes, "What's this?" I said, "Pick two of them."
There you go.
That's pretty good. And But no, man, everybody loves you. All the musicians love you, and
Well, that's
I don't
very
know
nice.
how many eulogies and funerals you've had to go to. It's got you got to be going. Oh God, another funeral. You did so
Yeah,
dead many.
those get to be tough. You start feeling like you're Georgie Jessel, doing that kind of deal.
George Jessel.
Remember Georgie Jessel? He was the one that was called on to do all the Hollywood funerals.
Oh my
Yeah,
God, that
I kind of
man.
felt a little like Georgie Jessel here lately. But
You were like the Pope of Death.
I
People
know
called
the
you do
Pope
the
of Death. But and a lot of those guys, like with Emily Smith and like Dickie Sims and those guys, they had their services in a bar. And you know how tough it is to do a eulogy in a bar? I mean,
Oh,
nobody gives a rat's ass, and I mean, they do, but they don't. And you're giving a eulogy about people, and you hear the pool balls clicking. It's just weird.
Curly's service, if you remember, was at Kane's,
Yep,
and I thought it was just perfect.
it
And it was,
was, and especially when his son Steve
Steve, what a
sang
great
"Good
guy.
Night, Little Sweetheart."
He
My,
sang just like Curly.
she sounded so much like Curly on that album. It just
Oh my
gave me
God.
chills. Oh, jeez. And good night, and the choice of the material, "Good Night, Little Sweetheart."
What
Uh,
a great, yeah, that was Curly's song, man. Rouse told me that he said Curly was his idol.
really,
I said, well, he
really.
was a good one, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I didn't think there was that much difference in age between those two guys.
I don't, there probably wasn't, but Curly was on those bands before Leon was.
Yeah,
I believe that's right. But yeah,
I
those
believe.
guys are all good. They were all great guys, and you've got to do a whole lot in your life for a little fella from Foyle.
Well,
You think about it. How did that happen?
I think maybe people in life get what they want the most, Steve. I mean, I think they do. And I'll tell you a story, and you were probably on this gig, and this is years ago when Clarence Cagle
Yeah,
had dementia so badly. And with dementia, of course, the pernicious thing about that is it robs your current memory and goes back. So you can remember stuff happened years and years ago, but you can't
yeah,
remember
right.
what you had for breakfast. And so Curly is up there and he plays boogie woogie, highball.
Highball,
He's
yeah.
doing great. And I believe maybe this was when old what's his name was running the band from up in Sacramento. Who am I trying to say?
Oh, yeah. I
Uh,
was not on the band with him,
oh,
and I
you weren't
can't.
on that band?
I was never played with the dude from California, and I can't think of his name.
And
He was a good singer too.
he was, and Truett Cunningham. Truett
Right.
Cunningham was his name. And so I think it was anyway. They were finished, and I was hanging out there at the Canes, and they were breaking down, and I was talking to the guys, and maybe Curly was one of them, maybe Truett, and they said, I said, well, I'll go. I visited with for a little bit. Says I got to go say bye to Clarence, and he said, well, John says, listen, he says, Clarence probably won't know you. He says he doesn't hardly remember anything. He remember how to play, but he doesn't remember people's names. He doesn't remember anything at all. So he's not gonna know you, just so you'll know. I don't want you to be. I said, well, thanks for letting me know. So I walk by there and I wave. Clarence is breaking down his electric piano. And I walk by and kind of wave him and say, Clarence, how you doing? You sounded great. It's hard for me to tell this story.
Uh-oh.
He gets up and walks over to me, shakes my hand, and says, John, we really appreciate what you do for us guys.
Wow.
And I,
That's heavy.
Jiminy Christmas.
Yeah,
And
he
so,
meant it. He
yeah,
meant it, Clarence.
I know.
Clarence.
It's just, but I mean, look, I was making a living doing it, and I was blessed and honored to be making a
Yeah,
living.
if there's a difference between a hired gun and a hired gun that cares,
Well, yeah,
you
yeah,
cared.
I suppose so.
You
I mean,
know,
you guys, I identify with you. That was the thing that the executive editor always had against me. I identify with you guys. He'd call Kathy in and berate Kathy. Oh, well, he's just writing about his friends.
yeah.
And I'd say, well, do you not want me to be friends with these guys? These guys are my friends.
You mean to write about my enemies?
Exactly. Or what want me to write about.
That's a guy that was jealous of you. That's all there was to it.
Man,
You were getting a little bit more nods than he was, and he
I
didn't.
guess. And it's bad manners to speak ill of the dead, so I shouldn't say.
We're not speaking bad. It's just we all have got bad. I've got so many bad thoughts, but I was a pallbearer at Clarence's funeral. Come to think of that,
Yeah, yeah. I was a
wow,
pallbearer at O.W. Mayo's funeral.
wow.
Clem McSpadden did the eulogy for Mr. Mayo.
Boy, there's a guy that knew how to announce an
He
injury at a
was, yeah.
rodeo. God,
His son is one of my best friends, Paul.
I didn't know that.
Paul McSpadden. He lives in Richardson. He's a Texas boy. He lives in Richardson, Texas.
Well, I know Clem McSpadden and the Wills family. I know John T. and that bunch loved him.
They did.
Now there's a guy. There's
Oh,
the greatest guy who ever drew a breath was old
by the
John
way,
T.
and speaking of that,
I gotta
except,
call him.
except for my goofy introduction, that album you guys did, John T. Wills and the Sons of Swing, is one of the greatest swing albums ever done, as far as I'm concerned.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. The stuff the couple things you wrote, the instrumentals, you playing on it, Bennett playing on it. You've got it surprised everybody that Tommy Triplehorn was playing those Count Basie notes on it. Those Count Basie chords.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna brag on this, man. This was really a big moment to me. We're in that studio and we don't have any money and we're trying to get stuff done and I'm ramrodding. I mean, I had to be kind of
Oh, I know
rude.
you produced it. You and Cummins, right? John Cummins.
Yeah, Cummins is in on it. Yeah, I know. But I remember Triplehorn, who I loved Triplehorn, just everything about him. He said, "Yeah, Ham, I'm really in awe of you doing this." He said, "You're doing a great job." Triplehorn told me that. That goes down to me as that was a really wonderful moment. Tommy Triplehorn.
Right. That's
You
right.
know, I was Triplehorn and T. Garden, Bill Davis, all them cats. I went out to
Right.
hear him.
Right. Sure.
Strader was playing bass for Gilmore, I guess, that night. And my memory gets mixed up, but Triplehorn comes in. He goes, "Yeah, y'all, Jeannie just got married or got engaged." And Strader looks at me and goes, "Yeah, what's her future ex-husband's name?"
You know, I wrote a little bit about Jeannie when she was Jeannie Summers and was a KMOD. Before she went off and became a movie star. And when Tommy died, I got an invitation to his wake or whatever it was, and they were having it at Harweldon. And I hadn't seen Jeannie since I hadn't seen Jean since she was Jeannie. So probably I hadn't seen her for 30, 35 years. So Janice and I walk in the door, and Jeannie's standing up there looking exactly like a movie star. She's in her 50s, I guess now, just immaculate. And I started to walk over there to say hi and tell her who I was. And I opened the door, and she looks over and says, "Hey, Willie, how are you?" I'm
I
going,
believe it.
"Wow." And so I said, and I was telling her about this movie that I had seen called Out of Sight, kind of a beach party spy movie. And it opens with Gary Lewis and the Playboys doing a song called Malibu Run in an outdoor theater. And the first person you see is Tom Triplehorn, and he's leaning up against something, which he always did. All the Tulsa musicians, they leaned against stuff or they sat down, And so I said, and she said, "No, I've never heard of that." And I said, "Well, I'll get you a copy." And we were talking. And I said, she says, I wonder if Gary Lewis even knows about that. She says, "Well, why don't you ask him? He's right over there." And I went
Yeah, he
over.
was.
Gary Lewis was there. And I went over and introduced myself because my band, Beef Squad, had opened for Medicine on the OSU campus in 1970. And that was Gary Lewis and Billy Cowsell's band.
I'll be darned.
That had the bass player that stuttered, Jiminy Christmas, you know who I'm talking about. Gordon Shryock was their bass player. Larry Bell and Ann Bell were in that band.
That's heavy.
It was a Tulsa band, but it had Billy Cowsell and Gary Lewis fronting it. We opened for them when they played the Student Union at Stillwater. He had seen us apparently on the Mazeppa show, and so we opened for. So I told him that, and he said, "Well, did I ask for you to open?" I said, "No, Mr. So and so put it together." Anyway, I ended up asking him if I could call him for an interview for a magazine piece, because I still do a magazine column for Oklahoma Magazine every month,
right,
for 20 some odd years. And he said, sure. And I did an interview with him about his days in Tulsa, living in Tulsa, playing with the band Medicine. It was, because nobody remembers that Gary Lewis did that. They remember Gary Lewis and the Playboys, and that's pretty much it. So, yeah.
So
And I just
a,
talked to Gilmore. I just talked to Gilmore 2 weeks ago. Gary Gilmore.
oh, Gilmore's still alive then.
Oh yeah, he's running a resort in Tahlequah. He and
That
his
sounds
wife, yeah, he and his wife and his son. We went up to his resort. He's got cabins right there on the river, right there in Illinois. I got to see Illinois at Tahlequah. Yeah, Illinois.
yeah, and
I
nobody
mean,
knows
you
who
could throw a
Gilmore.
rock from the back porch and hit him. And we interviewed him for this documentary that I'm doing called Tulsa Sound: The Originals, because he was with Cale very early on in his life.
Oh
Cale
yeah,
Originals. And he's just the nicest man, and you know this, nicest man you'd ever want to meet. Great guy. He's 80. He's 80 now.
him and Teagarden.
Him and T is Teagarden 80 now?
I think Teagarden just turned 80.
He just
Maybe
turned 80.
maybe 81. There's the nicest guy on the planet.
Oh, sweetheart.
We
Absolute
played a
sweetheart.
lot of gigs, me blowing bass lines on sousaphone and him on drums. And it cooked.
You remember we did Walmart Blues for that movie, The Red Dirt movie.
I want a copy of that.
I can't find it, and he can't find it. But I'm playing piano, you're playing tuba, Teagarden's playing drums, and
Schaefer's playing. Schaefer.
Is Schaefer playing guitar? Or is it no, it's Phil Norville. Phil Norville's playing from Marble Frog is playing.
I remember you guys called me in off a fishing trip to do one of those.
Did. Because we had a bass player that chickened out on. So, oh man, he calls up about the day we're doing the gig, or they were recording it at Teagarden Studio at 9 a.m. I've been sick all night, man. I can't make it. I don't think he could really play the bass. I think that was part of it. It was like, what was that great story when New Orleans, those guys from New Orleans, when that New Orleans had that horrible flooding, and those guys came up and said they were a band and they'd been more, and you guys got them on music instrument, they couldn't blow a note, right? Wasn't that the story?
It was like, this is what New Orleans is really like. They'll con you out of your dead gum tennis shoes. So
tell Heath about that story.
I can't remember much about it other than they came up and we thought, God, this is going to be righteous. We're going to play some 2-beat old stuff, and they couldn't play Come to Jesus in quarter notes, man.
No.
They were jive, which is, them cats in New Orleans, they're all jive. That's the jivingest town in the whole country.
Well, I remember there was a big deal at the Jazz Hall of Fame, and there was like a fundraiser to buy them all instruments because they didn't flood. Well, they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know which end to blow in on a trumpet. Doesn't seem
like. That's how we all wound up in the pawn shop and said, whatever happened to Jazz Jason? Jason.
I tell you, I saw him at another wake that I spoke at for Bagsby, Steve Bagsby. He was at Steve Bagsby's memorial service at Studio 308 in Tulsa, and they asked me to get up. David had asked me to get up and do a little eulogy for him. The Tulsa Playboys played.
I was there. I played on that. Yeah,
you were playing on that. Well, you remember then. That's Jason was there. He came up to me. That son of a bitch came up to me. I shouldn't say, could we erase it? He came up to me and no, you don't choice. And he was apparently Steve's friend, and he said, "Oh, this is a horrible deal," and he left. But David was dancing around in that cow uniform. You remember that? He had a cow.
Yeah.
Well, you know how the music goes. That's right. You were on that gig because we visited. That's right. So,
Milk Cow Blues.
So he's danced around the Milk Cow Blues. Well, the thing is, I mean, it's a small place. It's a big band. It's a loud band. And so David Bagsby is just in my ear all the time, real loud. 3 days later, I get an email from him. I just tested positive for COVID. 2 days later, I was down with it. So I got COVID at that gig.
No kidding. And COVID was pretty much over.
Yeah, this is later on. I'd already had it once, I think. This is after 2020.
I got COVID at a gig too.
Yeah, 2024, 2020, 2025, maybe even, Steve. It's
Yeah.
over a couple of years ago. Yeah, yeah. So
Like,
by that time, the virus had learned that you can't kill your hosts or you'll die too. So the virus had mutated. So you just got real sick. But
that's
because of that, yeah,
yeah, you got COVID from that thing.
yeah,
Jeez,
from David, yeah, and met Jason, saw Jason at the same time.
I just wonder what happened to him. Jason was I don't know what he did. I don't know all about all that crap, but he was good with people.
He
A
was really,
charmer.
he was a charmer. He was.
I don't think it was jive. I just think he was good at it. And
Well, but the problem was, I mean, he ended up owing, or that place ended up owing everybody a buttload of money. And I had to get, and I don't, I don't want to go too deep into it. I had to get a lawyer to get 20% of what I was owed.
oh well, I remember you were pretty deep into him, and he's like Earl Clark. Earl
Right,
Clark died, and I said, he died owing everybody in this room money, including me, and I still love the guy. I
right.
never got mad at Earl.
Well,
You
with
know,
Jason, I was doing these bios for the Sunday
yes,
night
sir.
shows they were having. Some of these kids, they were having these kids coming in from to you. Some of these kids had never had any press, any publicity. And I'd call them up, interview them, do a little 300-word piece that they put out with the flyers. And I said, look, Jason, I don't want to give me $100 for these. And I was, when that all went down, he was $6,500 in the hole to me.
God Almighty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's a shame it didn't work out.
Yeah, it is. It is because he had a
Probably,
good thing going.
He
Yeah.
was in the hole
probably.
with me. I did a interview with Jana Clark, and I don't know,
Right.
she had lost it. Like right before I left, she like lost it or something, and I was in Austin. But she came to like my house,
Yeah.
did the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, he had it was a nice showcase. Everything was good. They had popcorn and snacks and wine and beer you could get. It was great. It was a great place to go. And unfortunately, it was just, I guess underfunded, underfinanced, I guess. And it's too bad. Jason was the point man for it, and that's what happened.
Yeah, Sissa was good too. I like
I
Chuck, and
like
I
Chuck.
don't know all that stuff that went
No,
on.
no. Well, the
I
only
just,
reason I knew it was because I was directly involved.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, he owed all of us money, and I had to get pretty hateful with him to get some money. That was just a business deal, but
Yeah, that's right.
somebody doesn't do what they say they're going to do pay wise as a musician. You don't go back for any. I don't go back.
You can't. You can't. No. There's too many people. Remember Don White's statement? Don White always said, he said, people call you up, you're a musician, people call you up and said, well, we'd like for you to play now. There's no money, but you'll get really good exposure. And Don
Yeah.
always tells them, Don always tells them, musicians have died from exposure.
Dude,
He's a
Don
good
White.
dude.
Hey, Don White was somebody, like two people when I came in, that just like heard me playing and just like wanted to like jam with me. Was after that was Don White, and then Don White always, once because he saw that I could play with like a looper pedal and stuff, and
Right?
he's like, "You think you could fill in any of my gigs if I ever need you to?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he sent me a lot. I mean, he would just like, he found out that I could like, it's like he found out that I would keep his audience happy enough that if he wasn't there, he wasn't going to get in any trouble. So he
Right.
definitely
Right.
gave me a few phone calls. And then, man, I can't believe I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Steve, the guitar player,
Prior.
Pryor. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was playing at Dusty Dog,
Yeah.
and he was playing after me, and I was just playing, and it's like, he walks in. I was like, "Oh man, that's Steve Pryor." Then he just like looked over and heard me, and he came and just like sat next to me, just like loving all the
Oh,
jazz
wow.
stuff and everything that I was playing. And
Well, he had his demons, but he was a very decent guy and a monster guitar player.
oh yeah,
Uh,
Pryor's a
he was
monster.
there was a lot of those. There was a lot of good players in Tulsa.
Yeah.
I mean, people say Tulsa's the new Austin. It's not the new Austin. Tulsa's Tulsa.
Yeah. That's right.
We don't need to be identified with any other
No,
place.
no,
Tulsa, we can stand on our own in Tulsa.
Yeah,
I
because you have the
agree.
Kansas City. There's the Kansas City.
Heavy
Like,
influence.
well, there's a heavy Kansas City influence on the swing, and like when you come down here to Austin, if you hear of a lot of the Western swing bands, it's a little bit more polka and a little less Count
Yeah.
Basie. It's
Yeah.
a little more
Yeah. Yeah.
traditional.
Yeah.
So it's
That's a
like
good way to
Tulsa
put it.
has its own sound, and I prefer the swing sound, but also I do dance in a lot of these dance halls, and I understand why they're kind of anal about the
Yeah,
polka
sure.
sound down here because people expect a certain tempo and everything, and the swing
Well,
people.
Rodney, go ahead. I didn't mean to
No, it's
cut
all
in.
right.
Rodney Lake told me, of course, I played a lot of gigs with Rodney and rode a lot of miles with Rodney, and his stories are fabulous. But he told me, he said, man, he said, you just can't cook like a guy. He said, you got to grow up in the river bottoms to really cook it, man. He said, you got to be in the bottoms, got to be by
Right.
a river.
Mhm.
I got to thinking about that and I go, gosh, dang.
I'm
The
set
way
up
he
on the
loves
I'm set
song.
up on the banks of the Guadalupe right now.
There you go.
No, I'm
There you
kidding.
And
go.
This is
Lou's
actually, you
never,
wouldn't believe this. This is a picture of the river, just right down the road from my house, like 5 miles, the
Oh,
Colorado
wow.
River. Yeah,
Wow.
there's some pretty stuff in Texas. Like we just got done doing my dad and Bennett. Could you imagine being on a 4-day fishing trip on that? It was pretty fun.
Oh, man.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and I
well,
mean, I'm really digging this because, I'm like, this podcast is so fun, and it's like, you know, used to I would have thought this is work, but now I'm just like after tonight, I'm just like, it's like we're not just, it's like, hey, we have something else to do besides, you know
Right.
what I mean? Just
Right.
well,
staring at. That's what we did this weekend, staring
Willie,
at phones.
what's your favorite thing? Yeah, what's your favorite thing to write? I mean, musicians have their favorite stuff to play. What's
Right.
your favorite
Boy,
genre to write?
I don't know. That's really hard because I write, I've done about close to 60 books now, if you count the stuff I edited, stuff I co-wrote. I love writing
Jeez.
novels, but I love writing horror novels.
Yeah,
Uh,
you do. Boy, I know that.
and I love doing documentaries. We did this documentary called Tulsa Terrors. That's on. I was telling Heath, it's on Tubi right now, and it's on some other. It's on something Prime. I don't know what. Anyway, but I did it for RSU, and it's about those horror movies they made in the '80s in Tulsa that were direct to video and started the whole direct to video craze.
I didn't know that.
We were, yes, the Ripper on Blood Cult was the first one in 84, then the Ripper, and then Revenge. And that was in the days when you went to the video stores and pulled it, did all of that. And we were nominated, we were finalists for a Heartland Emmy Award for that. I love
Wow.
doing that. I love interviewing people. I love telling people stories. And I don't know. I like to write about stuff that interests me, and there's a lot of stuff that still interests me a lot. Music, movies, horror, comic books, pulp magazines. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's great to be interested in stuff.
And did you
My
know that?
room.
Did you know
I'm
the
sorry.
guy who did the horror? What was it? The late night OETA. Me and my dad used, or the old classic movies. Did you know him?
Oh yeah, yeah. I can't recall his name. B.J. Wexler.
Yeah.
B.J. Wexler. Yeah.
God, he made me like hungry for popcorn.
Yeah, boy, he could put down the popcorn, couldn't he? He had
Yeah.
the double scoop. Yeah, it looked like an above ground pool full of popcorn.
Yeah, he was cool, man. He was a guy that loved it. And I always tell people about, being on the stage. One reason I get along with people when I perform is that they know I'm being honest to them. And
Yep.
boy,
Yeah.
a crowd can tell if you're honest, and they can tell when you're reading or you're writing. That guy's telling the truth.
Yeah.
He loves it, and he's not jiving us. And yeah, it's just easy to tell.
Well, I've had a chance to do that, with this thing that Shelby and Janet and Scott McQuaid and I
Oh,
have.
that's nice.
Yeah, and
Jeez.
I've got my word. It's about around the Hollywood campfire. It's called, and Janet Rutland, Shelby Eicher, Scott McQuaid, and I do the narration, do a little bit of singing, but so I get to combine that. That's been great fun. I love that. Of course, I love playing with the Moody Dudes. Larry Schaefer and I, got the Moody Dudes, and we played a little bit of old guy rock and roll. Larry just learned all around the Watchtower, just trying to burn down Hendrix. And it's yeah.
I love Schaefer.
Oh,
I
he's a
don't.
dandy. He's a
He's a
dandy.
he's a good guy, and he's honest. He is an honest human. He loves his family. He crosses all the
Yeah. And
boxes for
I've
me.
never known anybody with a bigger heart. You start thinking about all the times he put together that Cane's Christmas giveaway. And, and the great thing that he did with that was he said, I don't care if they come pulling up in Mercedes Benz. If they're getting in line, he says, I'm not going to make any, I'm not going to make any judgment. Whoever wants to go can go. And that's the pure, if you want to say whatever you want to say, that's the pure Christian, that's the pure agape thing that's happening. I got a low battery here that just came up, so I'm going to have to.
All right.
We
Well,
probably kept a lot of your time.
Well, yeah, let's wrap it up. So Wooly, let's see, I got this. Give me 1 second. So you got some projects. If you could go do a little outro and talk about some of the projects that we didn't get to talk about.
Yeah,
if you want, and then mention where
yeah.
people can buy your books and some of the things, if you want to mention where they can get a hold of you and your website and some things like that.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Heath. I'll first of all, I've got a radio show I've been doing for 23 years that people can pick up live streaming Saturday night at 7 p.m. Tulsa time on publicradiotulsa.org. It's called Swing on This, Western Swing, and other stuff as well. We kind of sneak some other stuff in. We're not purists by any stretch of the imagination. I've got a book out called Beauty and the Bund, which is a horror story set in 1939 with my late friend Robert Brown, and it's available online. It's at my and in bookstores, and it's also on my website, which is www.johnwooley.com. I believe that's right. And you can also get my newsletter there. I got a 6 times a year newsletter, and that's free. And let's see what else. And I'm about to finish up a great little documentary I alluded to earlier. And it's not great because I'm doing it, but it's a great documentary because it needed to be done. It's called Tulsa Sound, The Originals. And it's about the first guys in Tulsa to create rock and roll. And it's Rodney's in it. Rodney Lay, of course, is in it. And
Johnny.
Talk about Rodney and the Blazers and all of that. But if you want to know more about my stuff, www.johnwooley.com is the place to go. And I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me do those plugs.
Yeah. Well, John, this was awesome. I've had a vision for this podcast for a long time. I knew it was going to be great, and maybe we can do it again. And maybe if we find another guy in Tulsa or something to have you in, maybe we could, me, you, and my dad, and could do it with someone else sometime or something. This was like a blast, I
think it would be great fun to do that. Yeah. Maybe I'd do it with Jason Roberts. That'd be somebody good to do a podcast with.
Yeah. I actually talked to him the other day, and he was like really wanting to do it. Yeah. So maybe I could get him to come over there, and then we could get you and my dad in on after a while. And, that way, I like asking questions, but it's like, man, it's having all the guys here, just having the natural conversation is the fun part,
Well, I'm glad to be able to do it. Thank you for asking me. I'm honored to be able to be on it. And Steve, it's always good to talk to you again.
Oh, you too, John. You're a sweetheart of a guy, just period.
So are you, and I hope to see you playing here pretty soon. Somewhere.
We'll see you at March. We'll be on stage together.
Before we go, John, when I recorded that album, I really appreciate, the write-up you did for me and all that.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun too, man. That was the very beginning, and I started a band down here called Aquifer, and we had quite a bit of success before the pandemic. And you can, if you ever want to check it out, it's on Spotify, Aquifer.
Aquifer, okay.
Yeah, Aquifer. So, all right, well, I'm gonna hit unrecord.
All right,
well, John. I don't